Hello, this is Joe. Welcome back to the channel. Well, today I'm proud to show you this Underwood Golden Touch Quiet Tab Deluxe medium-sized portable from around 1957. This machine is actually not in my collection. It is part of our friend Matthew's collection. He was kind enough to let me borrow it for this video. This is a beautiful golden colored typewriter, as is fitting with the Golden Touch badging. Stay tuned. Well, this is the first opportunity I've had to actually look closely at one of these late 50s Underwood medium-sized portables right before Underwood was bought out by Olivetti. So, just as a matter of record in my collection, I used to have a 1936 Underwood Universal. I bought it back in the teens from Brown & Smith Typewriter, which was a typewriter shop that went out of business around 2015, but they had been in service for decades. That machine I sold to a collector in Phoenix during the 2017 Phoenix Type-In. I kind of regret selling it because that was my first Underwood medium-sized portable. I do have the blue-colored Underwood 4-bank portable from roughly 1930-ish. I did have also at one time an Underwood Model 21, which was a medium-sized portable that came out after Olivetti purchased Underwood, and it had the mechanical chassis identical to the Studio 44, but in a different body style. I had that Underwood for a number of years. I bought it from a local thrift store, and you might remember the story I told about it if you remember that video. The guy that sold it to the thrift store lady told her that he rode a motorcycle out to New Mexico in the late 1960s. He traded his motorcycle for the typewriter and wanted to be a writer. I never find out who the writer was, but in the case of that Underwood 21 was the receipt, and it was an exchange between a car dealership and a nearby typewriter shop, both on Lomas Boulevard, where this typewriter shop had been. So I had that Underwood 21 for quite a few years. I ended up selling it to a collector. Right now I have two Studio 44s. I really like those. Also recently, well, last year, I got an Underwood 5 from Ted Monk, the large standard Underwood 5. I think it was a 1925 model. And just a few weeks ago, I rehomed that typewriter to make room for the Olympia SG1 on its table over here, because standard typewriters are difficult to store. As of right now, the only Underwoods I have is the 1930 blue Underwood Portable 4-bank. So that's my kind of background history with Underwoods, but I want to look at this today. These are beautiful. When Underwood remodeled these after World War II, they just started making them, I think, really gorgeous. Let's look at the features of this, and I will be comparing some of this to my blue Underwood Portable pre-war model because I see some similarities to it. And now, I have a bulletin just handed to me. If you like this program, please like and subscribe. I don't know what that means. Well, we'll start with looking at the front of the machine. So this keyboard is an older style keyboard. It lacks the number 1. It does have the dash and the asterisk on the right here. So it is called a Quiet Tab. So the tab key is here, and there is a set to the right of it, a smaller size knob, and then the tab clear is back over here. This arrow, of course, is backspace. Margin release is over on the right. Your 1/2, 1/4 fractions. Everything else about this is an American-style keyboard. So shifting, and when you shift lock, it will lower both shift buttons, and you can clear the shift lock with either left or the right shift buttons. So on the right side of the keyboard, you have your bichrome setting. The top is the top of the ribbon. The middle is the stencil setting. The bottom is the bottom of the ribbon right there. Nicely located, and these are multicolored decals. This is a single spacing machine, so if I press the space bar, the carriage doesn't move, but it moves fully as you release it. It is a 1, 2, and 3 line spacing machine up on the carriage we'll look at in a second. One of the most distinctive features is this plastic badging that says Underwood Golden Touch. And it's kind of a plastic badge, and it serves similar to the red Royal badge on portables and some of their standard machines. You push it in, and it releases the latch for the ribbon cover. On this particular machine, so there are two plastic studs that hold this plastic badging to the metal bracket behind it, and one of them was broken, so I had to take it off and epoxy it. But just know that if you have one of these, it's best to push the badge in on the middle of the badge. If you push it out near the edge, you're putting stress on those plastic pins. But it's a very distinctive badge. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this machine is that badging there. Okay, we'll look at the left side of the carriage. So the carriage return lever on this machine comes very close to rubbing on the ribbon cover, but there are no scratches or marks. So it comes very close but doesn't actually touch it, which is kind of amazing to me. And oh, by the way, the little hand on my thing is, I need to reconnect it. It's kind of loose. So if you see a wobbly hand, don't mind it. So one of the things I think that's distinctive about this era of Underwoods is the labeling for the 1, 2, and 3 line spacing. Instead of it being etched or molded into the metal side panel of the carriage, it's a decal. And it goes 1, 2, and 3 line spacing. I do find that 3 line spacing, the lever, is kind of down here, and you have to kind of dig your finger down in here to flip it back up. It's not quite convenient. Okay, so the center button on the left platen knob is your permanent line spacing disconnect. And then this lever up here behind the carriage return lever pivot, this is the temporary disconnect for the line spacing. And if you flip it back, it'll go back to the old line spacing. Very conventional, like a lot of other portable typewriters of this era. So you have a paper bale, a metal paper bale spring-loaded that has a flat paper scale on the front and 2 rubber-coated metal rollers that are adjustable. There is a paper guide on the left here. Of course, you can slide it back and forth wherever you want to. There is a telescoping paper support fingers, which I think is very distinctive. So on the back are the actual controls for adjusting the margins. So this is the left margin you push in and slide. The right one, of course, here. The bell, pretty good sounding. The actual margin indicators are these little red metal pointers that are pointing to the scale here. So the scale on the paper table behind the platen enables you to center the paper on the platen very easily. It has the same markings on either side that tells you the width of the paper. So for instance, this one will sit in here just around the 6-inch wide mark. And then we can load it in like that, and it pulls in very nicely and stays well centered. So on the left end of the platen, you have the end of page indicator system, and it's very similar to the way the Royal and the Smith Corona one works as well. So there's a little styling thing that I really appreciate is the little margin set levers have a nice little grooving on them. They're kind of indented with this decorative grooving. It's just a nice little design feature that I really appreciate. You wouldn't hardly even notice it. Of course, it's on the back of the machine, but it's something that I do appreciate. And of course, the shape of the paper support fingers is really distinctive as well. The paper bale has this large finger. Enables you to grip it and flip it up really nicely. Paper release lever is very cool, and also when you pull the paper release forward, it raises the paper bale so you're free to remove the paper at will, which is nice. Then there are carriage release levers on both the left and the right knob, as you would expect, and of course the right platen knob as well. If you like this kind of programming, consider tuning in every day at 4 p.m. right after Howdy Doody. And now, back to our program. So condition-wise, there's only a few slight little marks on the paint job on the front of the ribbon cover. And as we look under the hood of the ribbon cover, we see that the ribbon spools are the very classic Underwood style where the ribbons are wound in the opposite directions from most typewriters. Instead of the ribbon coming off the back of the spool toward the vibrator, they come off the front of the spool toward the vibrator. So one thing I really like about the Underwood system is when you're threading the ribbon through the vibrator, You have these two levers up here. If you push them together, it opens up the gaps in the fingers of the vibrator so you can easily remove and install your ribbon, and then just push those two little fingers out away from each other, and it closes up the gap in the vibrator, and the ribbon is all set in the vibrator. So this is one feature that reminds me very much of the 1920s and 30s Underwood 4-bank portable, this ribbon reversing and manual drive lever on the right side of the body. So if you flip it one way, it'll force the reversing to happen in one direction, and if you flip it another way, it'll reverse the ribbon immediately and make it go the other way. But this knob also spins, and it rotates toward you, and when you rotate it toward you, with the lever pushed to the back, it feeds onto the right ribbon spool. If you push it the other way towards you and then spin it in the same direction, it feeds onto the left spool. So this is a way of not only reversing your ribbon, but you can immediately thread the ribbon. Like if you get to a dry spot in the ribbon near the end of it, you can immediately just flip the lever and spin the knob briefly to get to some fresh ribbon without actually having to lift up the ribbon cover itself. Well, so on your left is my Underwood 4-bank portable from 1930, and you'll notice on the right side of the body it has that same ribbon reversing lever and manual ribbon advancement knob that the Underwood Golden Touch has from the late 1950s. And it's nice that Underwood kept this same ribbon advancing system, the manual reversing and advancing system. It's nice that they kept this throughout the mid-20th century, from the later 1920s all the way up to the end of the 1950s. I really like that feature. It's quite handy. And here's some detail of how the manual ribbon advance works. So here's the lever on the right side. This little worm gear up in here is turning that geared cog. And then if you flip it the other way, there's a worm geared on the other side, on the left side of the machine, that will be turning its cog the same way. Underneath the left side of the carriage is the carriage lock lever. The way this works is you want to just lift it up and then move the carriage over to the left, and it will lock into that place. To release it, you operate the carriage release lever and slide the carriage to the right, and then the locking lever will drop down, releasing the carriage. To gain access to the feed rollers, if you set the margin controls all the way to the outer edges of the carriage, you can move the carriage to extremely to one side. You'll see there are two rollers on each side. Here are the right-hand rollers, this one and this one. You do have enough room in here to address any cleanliness or dirtiness issues with a cotton swab and some alcohol, which is what I did here. And that was able to free up the rollers to feed the paper a lot more smoothly than it was before. So the typeface on this machine is really kind of distinctive. It is an Elite. It's 12 characters per inch. So here's a type sample that I did with the old ribbon before I replaced the ribbon. So it's a little bit fainter, but I really like the type style on this machine. The Q, the lowercase q, has a very short tail on it, and then the uppercase Q, the little hook on the bottom doesn't really intersect through the loop of the body of the letter. It's really down below it, which is really quite distinctive. I think that's really neat. So it's quite a distinctive typeface, and I didn't really see anything like it in the typeface catalogs on the typewriter database that were listed there. So the type symbol on the type slug is ES, is what it says. So ES, it might mean Elite, Special, or something like that, but it's quite a nice looking little small typeface. And I'm sure Matthew is going to be very happy with this typeface going forward, as he will be using this machine for his writing projects. So as I said earlier, I don't have an Underwood from the 1950s in my collection currently, but this would be a nice machine to have in a collection. I think the Underwoods of the 50s are really kind of underappreciated. Maybe I don't see as many of them in collectors talking about them on Facebook groups or whatever. So this is really a cool machine, and I appreciate Matthew for letting me borrow it today so I can do a review of it. Really like using it. It has a great touch, and I like the feature set, I like the controls, but especially the touch of it. And of course, the appearance of it is just beautiful. And as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.